The next speaker is the Union of Informed Citizen, which will be followed by the Central Asian and Southern Caucasian Freedom of Expression Network. Union of Informed Citizens, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Speaking of the role of civil society in the protection of human rights, one cannot ignore the shrinking space of CSOs in number of OSCE member states. Fortunately, Armenia, my country, is not the first in the list of those countries. The picture is worse in Russia, Belarus, Azerbaijan, and some other Central Asian countries. But it does not mean that we can ignore the tendencies of shrinking space of civil society in Armenia. By now it is mostly expressed in propaganda. For example, the public television has prepared reports to justify the fact that human rights defenders receive money from the West for anti-state activities. And in recent months there has been an extremely problematic tendency associated with shrinking space of lawyers' activities. For several months, judicial bailiff has been doing illegal searches against lawyers attending courts. Tomorrow, on September 13, more than 150 lawyers will hold a one-day strike to demand to stop these searches. I should add that by now we have good legislation regarding NGOs and media, but calls to change the legislation in Armenia are regularly made by Moscow. Regarding peaceful assemblies in Armenia, I would like to mention that there are peaceful demonstrators in Armenia who are still imprisoned for more than a year. So far, not a single person who abused the use of special means and force against peaceful protesters and journalists in June 2015 and July 2016 has been punished. As a result, many people in Armenia have started to be afraid of participating in peaceful assemblies because they have no reason to think that they will not be poisoned with tear gas, will not get burns or shrapnel injuries from stand grenades, or will not appear in jail, as it happened with hundreds of exclusively peaceful protesters in the last 2 years. We think that OSCE should call on Armenia to bring police officers who used violence against peaceful protests to the account. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The Helsinki Citizens Assembly, Vanadzor, you have the floor.
Thank you. And after the remark made by the Armenian government delegate yesterday, it seems that I should start my speech by saying thank you for allowing to be here and for the belief that I won't be prosecuted when I go back. And the only problem is that the delegation actually thinks this is a manifestation of their goodwill and not an obligation under the OSCE. This is exactly how freedoms are presented in Armenia, a gift that could be arbitrarily taken away. Within the last years, violations during assemblies became particularly violent, with arrests and apprehensions multiplying disproportionately every year. The rhetoric of maintaining public order has been largely abused by the Armenian authorities at the expense of freedom of assembly. Protesters, activists, and reporters were coercedly apprehended and taken to the police stations from the assembly venues arbitrarily without any legal grounds. In 2014, for example, there were only 106 persons apprehended, while in 2016 the number rose to around 1,000. We're talking only about peaceful assemblers, not different other incidents that have been taking place. There have been several threats, attacks, and criminal cases brought against advocates. There is also a new tendency, as my colleague mentioned, for searches of defense attorneys in courts and in prisons and arbitrary application of disciplinary sanctions against them. The reports on police violations submitted to the authorities are not properly investigated, whereas there is always harsh prosecution of any alleged crime or violence against the law enforcement officer. The purely political nature of the prosecutions during these assemblies is illustrated in the case of former candidate to the presidency, Andreas Lukasyan, who, during the hearing of deciding on his detention term, was asked by the court if he would continue his political activity after being released, and as he said yes, his detention term was extended. Monitoring of assemblies revealed that police officers responsible for maintaining public order carried firearms during 5 assemblies in 2016. At least 20 officers carried firearms during a march to the embassy of the Russian Federation. And this is clear because there is an obvious selective approach to controlling assemblies and of could be perceived as a threat to Russian interests or that have some political character. The attacks against civil society are committed officially through defamation charges or false statement charges, or unofficially through Russia-funded organizations that claim to protect Armenian traditional values and family values and attack anything that is pro-European or perceived as such.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to respond to the points made by 3 NGOs who spoke on the freedom of association and civil society in Armenia. First, I would like to respond to Helsinki Vanadzor committee. I don't want to go into debates who should thank whom here. I'm certainly ready to thank you. Unfortunately, she left. And thank you for being here. And you may be thankful for those who made your appearance here possible. I agree with you that OSCE commitments should be reference point for our dialogue. And there is no OSCE commitment on protecting armed rebellion. This was not my definition. This is a definition pronounced here by Mr. Ioannisyan yesterday, and I borrowed his word to show to what degree the violent seizure of police station differs from freedom of expression. One can hardly find any OSCE participating states who will consider armed people perpetrating killings of number of policemen and other persons assisting them as a peaceful protest.